Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Splendor Marvel. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Many years back, Splendor was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres, the Game of the Year in Germany, and it's been one of the most popular games and one that has stood the test of time and people are still playing it like crazy. Well, now they're coming out with a Marvel version of this, Marvel Splendor, but it's not just a reskin of different art. There's actually some new mechanisms here. So I'm going to show you the differences between the original Splendor and this new Marvel version of Splendor. Now, if you are just wandering on here because you're a Marvel fan and you have never seen or you're not familiar with Splendor, I'm not going to teach you how to play the game here. I've done a review and an overview of this Splendor before. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video, so if you're not familiar with Splendor, watch that first, because then the context of what's different will make a lot more sense to you, and then come back here. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, if you're not familiar with how the original Splendor game works, you're going to want to watch my review in the link in the description below, because that will give you context of how the game actually works, because in this I'm just going to highlight the differences. Now here I'm going to show you the different tokens. The bottom is the Marvel, the top is the original Splendor game. So from left to right we have the orange, which is soul, the blue, which is space, red, which is reality, purple, which is power, and yellow, which is mind. And notice there's only two colors that are the same between the two versions, the blue and the red. Now these gems and tokens work the same as the original game. Then here on the top you have the wild from the original game, and below that you have the gray wilds in this version, which are called the shield tokens. There's also some time tokens, which are green, and these aren't normal gems. We'll talk about how these work a little bit later. And by the way, the tokens are the same thickness and the same weight as the original game, at least the version that I have. They were both 13 grams. I measured them on my little food scale. Now here are the back of the cards. Of course, on the left is the original and the right is the Marvel version, just so you can see what the art looks like. Now, before we go look at the backs of the cards, because that's going to open up some new mechanisms, I want to show you the difference in the nobles. The original game comes with 10 nobles. You have 5 of them where you need 4 and 4, and you have 5 of them where you need 3 sets of 3. Now, it looks like you have way less here. They're just locations. They're not, nobles now, but they're double-sided. So there's less tokens, but there's actually less content as well, because here we have 5 of the sets of the 4s, and you have 1, and they're double-sided. So 2, 3, 4, 5. But you have 5 here of the sets of 3s, and you only have 1, 2, 3 sets of 3. So you're missing essentially 2 nobles. So you have 10 to use in the original, and you only have 8 here. And I looked at the colors, and it seems like the orange is the only one that's not shown up twice between the tiles of the 3s there. So a little bit less there, but there are some other mechanisms and other tiles, I think, that they tried to sort of add in, since they sort of subtracted 2 of the nobles there. I'm not sure why they did this, because if they added 1 more of these tiles that was double-sided, you would have had exactly the same, but maybe because they were trying to even out the cost of the other tiles that are in the game. Now let's take a look at the art of the game and the cards face up. We have our levels 1, 2, and 3 as normal, and you'll recognize some of the characters like the Hulk, the Green Goblin, and some of you big Marvel fans might actually recognize all of these. Now the big difference here is this thing called the Avengers token. Now you'll notice that some of these cards have an Avengers symbol, and some of them actually have 2. And the first player to get 3 Avenger symbols will get this token, and it's going to be worth 3 points. This shows you 3 Avengers, you get this token 3 points. But if somebody else gets more than you, not tied, they take this from you and they have 3 points. So this is sort of like the longest road in Settlers of Catan, where this can move around throughout the game. And interestingly enough, it can change the way the game ends, because if you have the amount of, the enough for the victory condition, which we'll go over in just a minute, but somebody takes this from you as everyone else has taken their last turn, then the game might not be over. It might go some more rounds. So this adds an interesting twist to the end of the game for sure. Now you may have noticed all of the cards on level 3 have this green icon. That's these green time chips. You can only ever get 1 of these. They're on every card that's on level 3. Again, talking about the victory condition is going to change. You're going to need at least 1 level 3 card to have gotten to win the game. So all of them have this, and when you get 1 of those or more, you just take 1 chip. So everyone can only have 1 of these at most. It's just to signify that you've actually done a card from level 3. And speaking of the end of the game, it no longer ends when one player gets 15 or more points and everyone else has equal amount of turns. Here you need 16 points and you need to have at least one card of each of these types that you see here. So you need to have one of these 5 types, or all the 5 types, and you need to have one of these, which means you would have had to have one of the level 3 cards, and of course 16 points. So it really changes the game. You have to build a little more, make sure you get a little more evenly built, and one more point than normal. But again, like I mentioned earlier, you can trigger the end of the game and have it go away if this is taken from you and you don't have 16 points. Now this is similar to essentially the mechanisms that are in the Cities expansion for the original game. Now that one came with a bunch of tiles like this that changed what you need to win the game, where this is the only one that's in this game. So they kind of used the Cities expansion, but they just placed one of them in here, but it does change it from the original game for sure. Now I went through all the cards and tried to match them up to see if it's, if the balance is the same as before, because adding this might have changed things, but it seems to not really have changed much. I tried to look at each of the cards from the different levels. For example, this one needs about the same amount. Again, the colors are quite different between the two, but it's the same amount of gems and tokens. But this one has an Avenger, it's both a blue, so it didn't really change how many gems you need. Same over here, you're getting 3 points and a blue, 3 points and a blue. This was a level 3 card, and you needed 5, 3, 3, 3, and you need 5, 3, 3, 3. So just to show you, this one doesn't have any Avenger symbols, 7, 3, 7, 3. In this one, you spend the same, you get the card, but you get an Avenger. So it doesn't look like you have to spend anything extra to get these, which means that when they come out, you're really going to be fighting for those, because it's not like, well, it's harder to get, it's just more advantageous to get them. So you might be using the reserve a little bit more to grab these. And again, when you use the reserve, you get one of these for the wild chips. That's pretty much it for the mechanisms. Let's take a look at more of the art. So here you have all 40 of the level 1 cards. And here you have all 30 of the level 2 cards. And here finally you have all 20 of the level 3 cards. All right, well, there is Splendor versus Marvel Splendor. So let me break this down in different categories. First, let's talk about the components. Now, Splendor itself, I think this one wins, the original wins, because of a few different things. First of all, the card stock. Now, they look and appear to be about the same thickness, but there must be some differences in the card stock, because it felt like the newer cards, they were a little more flimsy and they bent a little bit more. Now, I'm not going to say that the cards are flimsy. They're not like mass market sort of feeling kind of cards where like they bend in the littlest bit. But the original ones felt a little stiffer to me, even though they looked and appeared to be about the same thickness. Maybe it was a different type of cardstock. But I also will preface this by saying I have one of the very early versions of Splendor, and I think over time they've probably figured out ways to make the game cost less. So maybe a new version is the same as this. I'm not sure. All I know is my version has a little bit, more rigid or stiff cards for the original than the Marvel version. Also, the original version has 2 more nobles than the locations that the same locations in the new version. Now, granted, the Marvel has the extra chip color that gives more components, but I don't really think that's that necessary, because sure, you need to be able to track if you have completed a level 3 card, and the chip does that for you. But if it was a choice for me of either having a chip to tell me I got a level 3 card or having 2 more different nobles or locations, I would have rathered having the extra locations for more replayability and variability. So for me, for components, I'm going to say that the original Splendor wins for me. Graphic design. Now, Splendor, the original, wins for this one too, for 2 reasons. Number one, the numbers that show you how many tokens you need of each color, they're a little larger in the original Splendor. They're definitely, the font, it's just easier to read, especially if you're sitting a little bit further back. And I think they did this probably because they wanted to shrink those numbers and shrink those things just a little bit, so that the beautiful art of Marvel could sing through a little bit easier. But I really like having the numbers a little bit bigger. It makes it a little more clear when you're looking at all the numbers at once. So I like that. But Marvel does have the little bit, the color all the way across the top, orange, purple. It's very easy to see, so I like that as well. But for me, seeing the color of the gem versus the color of the band, isn't as big as a difference as seeing a larger number versus a smaller number. So for me, again, components and this one here, the graphic design, it's pretty close. It's neck and neck, but I'm gonna give the slight edge here to the original Splendor. Now let's go on to art. For me, the Marvel one is gonna win on this one. Now they're both nice art. Now I gotta preface this by saying I'm not like a humongous Marvel fan. For me, the theme does not add or subtract for me. It's not a detriment, but it's not a big add-on for me. And with that being said, I still like the art better because even though I love the art in the original Splendor, I think it's beautiful, I never really paid attention to it, you know? I just looked at it and went, oh, I need 3 of these, 2 of these, so this, cool art. I would never really like look at it and pay attention to it. But now when new cards come out or you get these cards, it's like, oh, there's the Hulk, or oh, there's, you know, all these different people, and you pay more attention to the art. And so for this, I'm going to say that the Marvel version wins. Mechanisms. Marvel definitely wins with this one, with the Infinity Gauntlet, which essentially is like the basic version of the cities expansion for the original version, adds that on. You need a different amount of points, you need to have one of everything. I like that aspect. It makes the game have a, you know, it just feels different, and I like that aspect of it. And the Avengers tile, sort of that longest road in Settlers Catan, where you need to have the most and you'll get that tile with 3, and I love how you could get the 16 points with that tile. You could trigger the end of the game and someone else might take it on their last turn and it keeps going around. And I like how you can the endings are a lot more exciting with this game. So the new mechanisms, absolutely, this is a better game, apples to apples, base game to base game for sure. So the verdict. Now, if you like Marvel, it's a no-brainer. The Marvel version is the one you should get if you don't have either, because the game's better and you'll be much more attracted to the art. Now, if you don't care about Marvel that much, or you have the original, this is going to be a tough one. I think the better version depends on you. If you're going to play it just on your own and you're a gamer and you want like a little bit better version, I think you'll like the Marvel version better. But if you're not going to use it and you're going to use it more for like, I want to introduce new people to the hobby, it's a little more simplified and not as much going on. And so if you're going to use it mostly to introduce new players to games, I think the original is better. Now, also, you got to talk about the expansions, right? I don't know if the Marvel version will come out with expansions. Usually these specialized versions don't, so I'm going to lean towards saying no, but I don't have any knowledge of that. And the original one has expansions. The expansion came out with 4 modules that you could play with. 3 of the 4 I loved. I've reviewed those. If you're the type of person that wants to buy expansions and play with these different modules, well, then you're probably going to want to get the original anyway. And if you already have the original and the expansions, unless you really love Marvel, I don't see a need to get this because you've already got all the goodies. You've already got making the game more difficult and more gamery. But if you love the art, then you're going to want to get this anyway. And it still feels a little bit different because you have the Avengers tile. So hopefully this has allowed you to see, you know, whether or not you have it, whether or not you're into Marvel, or whether or not you have the expansions. If this thing is right for you, should you get it? Hopefully you should know now. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. Lucky Duck Games has launched a brand new online shop and are offering you, my viewers, a special discount. During checkout, use promo code GameBoyGeek10 and you'll save 10% on the price of your games. On the Lucky Ducks game shop, you'll find exciting new releases such as Tang Garden, which I recently reviewed, and the link is below, and It's a Wonderful World, as well as award-winning games like Chronicles of Crime, which is one of my favorite cooperative games of all time, and Vikings Gone Wild. So why not visit LuckyDuckGames.com now and find something new to play?